And welcome back to another episode of the Cool Your Jets podcast. I am PJ Clark alongside Michael Nania. Ben Blessington might be suiting up his QB3 for the Chargers after they cut Max Duggan the other day. Who knows? Michael, how are you feeling after the final joint practice of 2024 training camp?
I'm feeling good. Like I think every Jets fan is right now. I remember saying it going into that Commanders joint practice a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to see the Jets be thoroughly dominant against Washington. It felt like they did that. Carolina was a little more of a mixed bag. I liked what I saw from the offense watching it in person. Defense I did not watch, but it seemed like that was a little bit mixed from what I heard out of there. But today against the Giants, it was unanimous no matter which reporter you were following, which fan was sharing videos. It doesn't matter. However you consumed this joint practice, it was obvious that the Jets were overwhelmingly the better team. By the end, Sauce Gardner was waving goodbye to them. They're dancing, celebrating. You could just feel the confidence that they were exuding. So Jets did what they were supposed to do in this joint practice against a team that we all expect them to be much better than. And that is thoroughly dominate them on their own practice field with their own fans in attendance. So I'm feeling great. I'm sure you are as well, because you were adamant last week that you don't want to see the Jets out there against these blue gremlins from the South. And I think after this performance today, you could feel good that they're not going to have that happen on Saturday.
Yeah, Jets seemingly dominate the New York Giants in joint practice today on both sides of the ball, which is as a team that has not even playoff expectations, Super Bowl expectations. You got to do that to what I would call probably a bottom five roster in the league. And as you said, the Blue Gremlins, I have not shied away from my feelings on the New York Giants this year and whether I feel like the Jets should associate with them at all in this game in the Snoopy Bowl on Saturday night. But Jets regular season Snoopy Bowl champions last year by the skin of their teeth, clearly joint practice Snoopy Bowl champions today. I think let's just start at the top. The most important guy probably to everybody on the entire team this year, Garrett Wilson, uncoverable by literally anybody else not on the Jets, seemingly through three joint practices.
Yeah, through the clips that we've seen, whether it was from the Jets or fans in attendance, it's just been great to see how easily he's creating separation against some of these corners. And granted, he hasn't faced a star-studded lineup so far. We all know that, but he just looks like a man amongst boys out there. You hear that phrase a lot, but truly watching these guys cover him, it's like they're moving at two different speeds. The way he releases off the line, his double moves out in space are just leaving people in the dust. And against the Giants today, it felt like you would refresh your timeline and Garrett Wilson hit another 50-yard reception, and the videos were there to back it up. So he's doing his job with ease right now. He's got great chemistry that he's building with Rodgers. And I just saw it in person when I was there in Carolina. Rodgers will not hesitate to go to him in any situation. And that's not to say he won't spread the ball around, especially when Mike Williams is back. But Rodgers does not care where Wilson lines up, if he's running a go route, if he's running a slant, an over route in the intermediate part of the field. He's going to look his way play after play after play. And why not when Garrett Wilson is going to deliver with the consistency that he's currently delivering at?
Obviously, it's a joint practice. You can only tell so much, especially from clips, as you've mentioned a couple times. When you're out there, especially at field level, it's hard to kind of see the back end coverages and where things get blown and whatnot. But man, the one video, I forget who posted it, but the one shot from the sideline, everybody will understand the video I'm referencing. But the one where he goes into this kind of fake slide and comes back to the ball and pops right up and passes the defender. He feels like he is primed for an absolute breakout year, which feels insane to say for a guy that has back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with the rotating cast of characters the Jets have had at quarterback this year. But even if, God forbid, Tyrod Taylor is the Jets quarterback this year, it feels like this guy has reached another level and is heading into year 3 and is looking towards a major $30+ million a year extension that you're seeing the Chases and the Jeffersons and the Amon-Ra St. Browns get. It feels like he's going to enter that superstar tier this year come hell or high water. And based on quotes from, the Jets players, Tyron Smith called him a phenomenal player today. Braylon Allen said he's the best football player he's ever
best
played
football
with.
player he's ever seen outside of
I
Rodgers.
mean, that's some pretty high praise, especially from Tyron Smith, who has seen a lot and has been around the block for a long time here. It really feels like the Jets have a legitimate superstar on their hands.
Yeah, and the eye test has always been there throughout the first 2 years. He quickly burst his way into being their top target back in 2022. Like, he started out in week 1 not as a starter. He was, the third or fourth receiver in that game, played only about half the snaps, but he stood out so much that by that week 2 game in Cleveland, he was already the guy. And since then, he's only continued to build on that, doing what he's done in spite of the quarterbacking. So the numbers are the numbers. It's great that he's hit the 1,000 mark in each of those seasons, but regardless of what he could do with those quarterbacks, you could just see it when you watch him. He has that it factor that the Justin Jeffersons and Tyreek
He's been
Hill
open
of the
plenty of
world.
times that these quarterbacks could knock out of the ball, for sure. Absolutely.
Exactly. Like, he just has the ability to get open, and you can see it when you're watching the games. Like, he'll be missed on a deep ball, or a quarterback will get sacked, and you see on the film that Garrett Wilson was wide open. That's what makes a superstar to me. Is like, I feel like most receivers in the league can have a good highlight reel, but it's how often do you make yourself an option? And Garrett Wilson is always an option. And that's why he's going to have a Davante Adams type of year, because he is the same caliber of player in terms of when can you get him the ball? And the answer to that is pretty much anytime you want to. And that's why Davante Adams was so productive with Rodgers, and it's why Wilson is going to do the same. I really think he's going to have a Davante Adams type of season this year. So it's exciting to watch him do this. Even if it's not the best competition, even if it's joint practice, you could just see how overwhelmingly dominant he is against the lesser competition. So, that matters too. You have to be able to feast in those games against the teams that are way below you. And then when the top tier competition comes, like, the Jets have the talent to compete with those teams as well. But you got to establish yourself against the lesser opponents. So it's good to see the Jets doing that, especially their superstars.
I mean, listen, it is just a joint practice against, again, these are 3 pretty bad teams. They were all, picking in the top 6 last year. So it's not exactly a murderer's row that the Jets have faced here. But Deontay Banks was a first-round corner. I mean, that's a guy with some pedigree that is going to be a starter on the outside for the Giants, and Garrett just ate him up, which is exactly what you would want to see him get to that next level. Not that, he couldn't have done that in past years, but I think it's just becoming more and more apparent now. And you've had 2 full camps of chemistry with Rodgers that clearly has built up into kind of this seamless Davante Adams, Jordy Nelson type thing. Like you mentioned there, that, what is Mike Williams going to give you? Still a question right now. Can Lazard bounce back? Then you got the Gibson, Corley, it's going to be an interesting second target getter, I would say. I wouldn't know who to put money on out of those guys just because of Mike Williams' health concerns. But when the chips are down, it's going to be 8-5, and it seems like they've really hammered that point home so far in joint practices. I guess we'll stay on the offensive side. It seems rather dominant across the board, across the ones, across the twos. Tyrod hit a couple deep shots reportedly today. Where would you want to start on the offense, not including Garrett Wilson right now?
Well, definitely the next thing I was going to get to is the offensive line, because on the same topic of those big plays that Rodgers hit to Garrett Wilson, whenever I saw one of those clips, the next thing that stands out after, the obvious of the bomb pass is how good the protection was for Aaron Rodgers.
The Hall of Fame left tackle bullying Brian Burns, baby. That's
bullying
what that
him.
is.
I mean, there were reps with both him and Thibodeau where, he hit Tyron hit that snatch trap technique once where he swats the hands down, puts the rusher on the ground, on his knees, can't do anything to affect the play. There was one rep where Rodgers hit Brees on an angle route for a touchdown, and Tyron Smith has Kayvon Thibodeau like a yard past the line of scrimmage. He's miles away from doing anything to affect Aaron Rodgers. And it's not a sight that Jets fans are used to. It feels like the majority of great passing plays that we've seen have had to happen in situations where the quarterback kind of had to create. But now it feels like that they have the offensive line to where the quarterback doesn't have to be mobile and create things on his own to have the opportunity to make big plays. And, with the quarterback that you have who's 40 years old, you need that if you're going to be successful. So it's extremely promising. Even if the Giants don't have the greatest defense of all time, they still have talent on their D-line. Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon, Burns, although I think Kayvon and Burns are both a little overrated. They're still decent edge rushers, and the Jets' offensive line looked to be consistently dominating them in pass protection. So we're not used to seeing clean pockets. So I screenshotted a couple of them and posted them from the clips that were out. And I was just thinking back to 2020 when the Jets played the Cardinals, and some guy named Dennis Gardeck had 2 sacks against us, who no one ever heard of, special teams guy who had no sacks in his career going into that game, just pops off against whoever we had to tackle in that game. Who knows? But now we got Tyron Smith, and that's exciting. That's as exciting as Garrett Wilson, as Aaron Rodgers, as Breece Hall, as anything you could talk about with this team is the fact that they have Tyron Smith as part of a stacked offensive line.
It is. It's like it's so funny. Like, we're in the doldrums now. We're doing 2 episodes a week, just grasping at straws, talking about Takk McKinley out here, and it's like so little of this legitimately matters because you just look and at full health, like I think I mean, listen, we're biased, right, to an extent, but I think it's top 5 with a bullet. If you wanted to call it top 1 roster in the league, I probably wouldn't fight you. Like, I think it's just a great, great team. And to see that the offensive line is at full strength early here and is just, listen, Burns, Thibodeau, those guys are no slouches. Those are high quality, double-digit sack. Is Brian Burns worth that money? Debatable, as you said, but those are some big name edges out there. And Dexter Lawrence, apparently in one-on-ones today, Tippmann did not get beat and kind of held his own there, which is always good to see. And, between Vera Tucker and Moses and Smith, like, does this line have the potential to get banged up? Absolutely. Like, nobody is going to bat around the bush there. This is a boom or bust proposition for the offensive line. But man, if all 5 of them are out there, it goes as far as Aaron Rodgers goes, and Aaron Rodgers is only going to go as far as the offensive line can protect him.
Yeah, and on your point of, grasping at straws at this point of the calendar here in late August, I think the reason for that is everything that's going on feels so inconsequential, inconsequential relative to what we're used to, because there really isn't much to prove. It's all there. We just have to go see them do it and obviously stay healthy, although that applies to every team. But it's just hard to look at this roster and say that it's not top 5 at worst, but I'm 100% with you. I don't think it is biased to say they have a chance to be number 1. Like, I cite this a lot, but Mike Clay at ESPN, one of their top analytics guys, he has a great roster ranking that he puts out every year that's based on rating every single unit on offense and defense in the league, linebacker, safeties, O-line, every group. And he had the Jets number 2. And Brandon Ayuk is up in the air. The Niners were number 1. So with Brandon Ayuk up in the air, if he leaves, why not number 1? And then that's also with the questions of, like, we don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to outperform the expectations that he has. So what if he does that? Then the Jets are even better than they're supposed to be. So I don't think it is biased to say that this is a top 1, top 2 roster in the league. It truly can be that. And that talent is the source of why watching this right now doesn't feel like it matters as much as it has in recent years when the Jets needed to see certain guys step up if they were going to have a chance of being successful. Now they have the guys like Tyron Smith. We don't need to see what he does in joint practice. He's Tyron Smith, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Rogers. The talent is there. So that's why you do kind of have to grasp a little bit to find things to talk about at this point. But at least today against the Giants, a lot of first team reps to see the dominance was exciting. And it's probably going to be the last time we see some of these guys play any sort of real
I hope
football
so.
against another team until San Francisco. So it's nice to bask in that right now.
Yeah, I mean it's good. Listen, it's just nice to win one, and it seemed definitive. Obviously, being in New York on New York or Florham Park and wherever the Giants are in East Rutherford, I think. Whatever you want to call it, a lot of media out there on both sides today. So I feel like we got the most comprehensive picture, I would say, of joint practices today, just by virtue of having so many dual reporters on both teams. It seemed like Brees Hall, you just brought him up, obviously. Running plays in training camp really can only get you so far, but it seemed like Brees was working with the hands a little bit, which is something that when you go down the line and have so many question marks at the receiver depth right now, I'd be interested in seeing how Hackett and by virtue Aaron Rodgers want to incorporate Brees into the game this year. We've mentioned that, can he get to 1,700 scrimmage yards kind of thing? It seems like he was a little bit of a receiving weapon today against the Giants in joint practice.
Yeah, and it's cool to see that because we all know like that Brees racked up a lot of receptions last year, was active in the passing game, but a good chunk of that was dump offs because, Jets didn't have time to get the ball down the field with their O line. They didn't have other receivers getting open down the field. So I would like to see Brees Hall get more involved as a route runner because he's capable of doing that as well. That's been on his film, whether he's made the catch or not. There have been a lot of great routes out there that sometimes haven't been capitalized on or utilized enough. So he had the angle route touchdown today. And in recent practices too. I think there was one recently where he had a fade touchdown, if I recall correctly. So it seems like he has been used in different ways. And that was a controversy last year. Like, why did it take Hackett so long to recognize that he could do these things? But better late than never, I guess. So, yeah, Brees Hall is route running talent. I think they should maximize that and find ways to get him into the concept beyond just screen passes and dump offs. And he could do a lot with those. We saw against the Giants that he could turn a check down
Absolutely.
into a 50-yard touchdown. So still great to get him the ball in those types of situations, but he can win against linebackers as well. So I like to see that they're tapping into that.
And I think by kind of in connection with that, when you have, I would say you got better depth in the running back room this year. I mean, it seems like
for sure.
Braylon Allen had another good day today. I didn't see a ton of Isaiah Davis love on Twitter, but it seemed like Braylon had another good day today. And when you have that 2 or maybe even that 3, wherever Davis shakes out, get Brees some slot reps or run those Texas routes out of the backfield, and you can worry about. You never want to give him too much punishment and have too many hits, especially downfield against a linebacker like that. But maybe you can get a little bit more exciting knowing that, all right, Braylon's good for a series here. Braylon's good for 5 plays, and we can run him out there and he'll pick up 12 yards on a couple carries here, and you can plod down the field with now a big, strong backup running back that maybe I feel like the Jets haven't had behind Brees recently. And I think that's just another level that this is, like you said, it's better late than never. Hackett obviously struggled last year when you lose your quarterback on the 4th play. I don't want to make excuses for Nathaniel Hackett. I really don't. But like when you lose the entire offense on the 4th play of the game, like, yeah, it's going to be a long year at that point. So I do think Hackett did some decent things last year. You look at the Kansas City game, and I thought obviously the Jets offense was kind of humming there. And I don't know. I said it about Lazard. I'll say it about Hackett too. I kind of feel like for the Rodgers contingent last year, it was kind of just a wash. Everybody might have just quit. Whether you want to say that's good or bad, I'm not. I don't agree with it, but I feel like those guys might have just checked out early and are coming back this year. I know Lazard, if we want to get to him quick, had a bad drop in the back of the end zone today, in red zone, but seemed like he bounced back with a couple other catches, and that is a guy obviously that has a pretty good rapport with Rodgers there.
Yeah, like I think it's fair to criticize Lazard for like he quit last year. It seems pretty fair to say that based on some of the lack of blocking effort or route running, whatever it was. It did seem like the effort declined, and that's bad. He shouldn't have done that. And as for Hackett, I think he, despite the historically difficult task that he was given, I still feel like he fell even beneath the bar of having Zach Wilson in that offensive line.
Yep.
Because he didn't make the most of having Brees Hall. Even Tyler Conklin, I feel like, is someone who could have been maximized more. So there are quite a few things he could have done better. It was still a poor season considering that, but with all that being said, it was still a difficult situation. So look, this is where we're at. Hackett is the offense coordinator. Lazard is here. So why not be optimistic about them bouncing back with a guy who they have had success in the past with? So, yeah, I'm going to try to see the positive going forward. Last season, not promising, but as long as Rodgers is out there, let's see what they could do with them because Rodgers believes in them. And, it's worked with them in the past. So let's see what they could do. And Lazard, he's had some bad drops. There's one in Carolina that led to an interception, seemingly had one today. But he's always been a guy who drops passes. At the very least, it seems like now he's making some plays alongside those drops. He did bounce back with a couple of touchdowns today based on the reports. So it's good to see that. The drops hopefully don't hurt too much because you're not targeting him as much this year or using him as much as you were last year. But if he could just contribute like 3 or 4 touchdowns this year, couple of deep balls, just sprinkle in big plays where they're needed as a third, fourth option in that receiver room, I think you could be happy with that. So we'll see if he could do that.
Let's hit one more offensive player kind of down the roster. When we talk about the inconsequential feeling of this preseason and training camp, one thing that is consequential is the wide receiver bubble, I would say, when you look down the roster. Obviously, Irv Charles has kind of thrown a wrinkle into that. But Jason Brownlee seemed like he popped today. And this is a guy that kind of brings a different size, pretty big dude, not the fastest, not the little quick shifty, like you're looking at the end of the roster there with Corley and Gibson when you look at the wide receiver depth, which has been, I feel like, outside of Tack McKinley and the edges and the Hassan Riddick, wherever we're at on that, we've talked about the wide receiver depth more than anything else, and it's starting to take shape. But it seemed like Brownlee popped today, and at this point, I mean, we have one game left, and I know Brandon Smith's been pretty good. I would kind of see – I would be surprised to see Brownlee left behind. I don't know if he necessarily makes it through waivers when you look at across the league, maybe some teams also struggling with wide receiver depth, but I would like to get your take on Brownlee before he might have to have a big game on Saturday to kind of show us something here.
Yeah, it seems like Brownlee had a huge practice, and it feels like he has this way of sticking around and showing just enough potential for the Jets to believe in him because in game, we just have not seen that much. Last preseason, he didn't do too much in those games. And then in the regular season, when he got some opportunities, not a lot there as well. He had the 1 touchdown, but it was uncovered. Other than that, only 4 other catches in 7 games. So, yeah, he has not shown too much in game. And then in preseason this year, last game, I feel like was kind of rough for him. There were some contested targets he couldn't come down with. And you don't expect him to make every contested catch, but you just want to see him flash occasionally, especially since it feels like contested catches are supposed to be a big part of his appeal. So in game, we just haven't seen much, but it seems like the Jets like what he shows in practice enough to have him at the forefront of this competition. And with practices like the one he had today, now I haven't seen any of the plays he made yet. Hopefully the Jets share some of those, but
Yeah.
based on the reports, it seems like he was pretty active and had at least one great catch in the back of the end zone. So feels like he somehow does enough to get the Jets to buy into his potential, but he's got to translate it at some point because you mentioned Brandon Smith. I mean, a guy that no one's talking about, he comes right in and makes, he's made 3 big catches already in 2 preseason games. So, Brownlee has to translate that to a game at some point, but this competition is tough at wide receiver because no one's really put a stranglehold on it. I mean, Brownlee's a guy who had a chance to do it, hasn't really done it. Brandon Smith is injecting himself into the conversation now, and Malik Taylor's been out, so he hasn't had a chance to make a case. So it'll be interesting. But Irvin Charles, with his special teams value, I feel like is still in the driver's seat here.
Yeah.
And in a perfect world, you would love to keep as few of those players as possible who are just special teams and probably won't do anything on offense. But if none of these receivers are going to push Charles out, then you would like to take the guy who brings something to the table for your team. So I still feel like Charles is in the lead there.
Yeah, no, I mean that's how it seems right now. I think you're kind of waiting for somebody, and I like I said, I think when you look across the league and you're looking at, everybody can go 3 deep, most teams can go 4 deep, but when you're looking really at the bottom of the barrel here, it feels like there's not a ton of wide receiver talent out there, and I don't think the Jets are alone in this position of struggling, and I think that may make Corley even more important when you have him as wide receiver 5 probably right now if Mike Williams is healthy, and you're gonna need like Mike Williams cannot be relied on. I wish he could. I love Mike Williams as a player, but that's going to come up at some point, and you're going to have to go 5 or 6 deep, and I think Brownlee is probably 6 right now for me. And then Irv Charles would make that 7. But to keep 7 wide receivers, that's a spot that has to come from somewhere else. So is that, the Chess or spot at special teams on linebacker? Is that an edge spot? Is that a cornerback spot, which has also been complicated by injury? I guess that's a good transition to make over to defense. Obviously, the high-powered New York Giants offense with multiple interception thrower in the preseason, Daniel Jones. Not exactly a threatening unit, I would say. Malik Neighbors is a nice player who's had a really nice training camp in preseason. I believe an 11 on 11 today. He was targeted 6 times. He had 3 catches. So nothing huge from him. No Saquon Barkley anymore. Wan'Dale Robinson seemed like a lot of underneath stuff, but the Jets were in a pretty good position to play defense successfully today.
Yeah, I mean, not a great challenge, but I thought the Sauce Gardner press conference about Daniel Jones was hilarious. I was cracking up at that, just watching him try to hold back his laughter, just smiling his way through it. That was fantastic. I mean, if you're a Giants fan, I don't know what you feel right now, but it's not positive, that's for sure. But it's good to see the defense seemingly have a pretty successful day. But to look at some of the defensive roster battles and to look back at that Panthers game a little bit, I mean, we came on here after that game.
Oh, we're going back, baby. Here we go.
For what to talk about. And after rewatching it, I'm still at a loss. Like I get excited for the preseason to break down what happens and write articles about some of the most tiny things that happen in these preseason games, but it was just difficult to find things in this game, even defensively. Like you held the Panthers to 12 points. They had 50 something passing yards, but despite that, there just wasn't too much amazing on defense. But Takk McKinley, our guy, we got to give him his shout out. He did stand out again. Still,
Takk McKinley might be CYJ Player of the Year or early contender for CYJ MVP.
Yeah, I mean, we got to have our guys on this podcast. So he's in the lead right now for sure. Hope maybe we could have him on at some point. That would be great if we could get that done. Add him to our friends of the podcast list. So Takk McKinley, the explosiveness off the line, along with good run defense. I think that is a surprising aspect he's brought to the table. Setting the edge well, showing a motor, chasing down plays. especially compared to the guy he's, I don't know about competing against, but because he's probably on the roster, but compare that to Michael Clemens, a guy who, that's his strength or supposed to be is setting the edge and stopping the run, but he's a huge guy for that position who does not have like lateral agility or quickness. So we've seen him get beat in these preseason games on zone reads. We've seen him miss tackles in the backfield on a cutback. So to have a guy like McKinley, who is obviously far more explosive and productive as a pass rusher, but he's also showing you that he has a little bit more mobility as a run defender to protect the edge, especially in a division where you got to play the Miami Dolphins, who are elite at running the ball outside. It, to me, makes it seem like not only should you keep McKinley on your roster, but I think he should be playing over Michael Clemens, let alone Mike Clemens playing as your starter and base personnel. So I really like the trajectory that Tack McKinley is on. And here we go again with us thinking this was going to be a succinct podcast, but Tack McKinley comes up, and then all of a sudden this is a 10-page essay on Tack McKinley.
Tack McKinley minute. We're back, baby. Listen,
Yes.
when I rewatched the game, like you said, there was not a lot there. I know I said it on Saturday night. That feels like forever ago at this point. But man, like he's just got juice. Like I feel like he's the only guy of these reserve edges. And like Eric Watts, I saw a clip of him in one-on-one today. I guess when the Jets were live doing their like training camp central show this morning, they were showing some O-line, D-line one-on-ones, and Eric Watts got stonewalled by Evan Neal, who, Evan Neal was allegedly a top 7 pick. That was a thing that happened, but whatever.
I'm say that occurred.
That people said that Evan Neal got picked before Garrett Wilson. I don't know where they're getting that information from, but people have said that happened. But then on his second rep, he kind of ran around Matt Nelson, who's a depth tackle, ironically for the Lions. So I'm very familiar with Matt Nelson's game. But like, listen, I haven't seen a lot from Eric Watts in the games. I haven't seen a lot from Brady McGregor in the games. I've seen nothing from Michael Clemens except botching that first Washington touchdown. And I mean, Tack McKinley, he's just like, he moves different. And this is a guy who has came here to try to resurrect his career as a first round pick who, I don't know if he ever lived up to expectations necessarily. He's had a couple nice years, but he was out of football and is trying to just rejuvenate his career. And you had a great tweet the other day. Michael Clemens is old. Tack McKinley is less than 2 years older than Michael Clemens. Yeah. You kind of underrate how Clemens is a year older than where he should be in college development wise. That I don't know, man. Like
he's like 3 years older than where he should be. He was a 25-year-old rookie.
Yeah. So you might have something there in McKinley, and you don't know how the day-to-day practice looks, and the joint practices can only give you so much. We're not out there, so it's all of this is just kind of conjecture, but based off the games, man, I don't know how that guy isn't like edge 3 right now. And you have Jermaine obviously in tier 1, and then whatever Will McDonald is going to give you. Will McDonald had a good day today, reportedly. Keep on stacking those. Good. But he's not going to give you a lot versus the run game. We know that. We are 100% resigned to that fact, and we're hoping we can get there at some point. But if Hassan Reddick isn't going to show up, out of the rest of this team right now, I think I'm taking Tack McKinley over everybody else that wasn't drafted in the Jets in the first round.
Oh, yeah. And preseason games are preseason games, and he's beating who he's beating in the second, third string.
But nobody else is beating them.
No, that
Will
and
McDonald,
the fact,
but
true. Will McDonald's doing it. Got to give him his credit. But that and explosiveness off the line, timing the snap, and being as fast as he looks off the line, that's going to translate, because that doesn't have to do with who's in front of you. He just looks explosive, and he has juice that outside of Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, no one else on this roster is particularly close to, obviously excluding Hassan Reddick. So in the event that you don't have Reddick, who's going to come close to maybe giving you a fraction of the ceiling that Reddick brings you? And it's not Michael Clemens, that's for sure. And these other UDFAs have had their opportunity. to show that they have the ability to do that, but they really haven't. I mean, Braden McGregor had a couple nice pressures in this game, but didn't really show the finishing ability, and just, overall he doesn't have that juice that Takk McKinley is showing. And he was a first round pick, didn't really live up to that, but he was a decent edge rusher, and that's what the Jets need right now. That's all they need from him or someone at the bottom of this roster. JJ is one of your starters. He's a great balanced player in both phases. You're hoping Will McDonald can be at least a good pass rush specialist this year who could flirt with high single-digit sacks, maybe get up to 10, make some strip sacks for you. He has the talent to do that. But in addition to that, you just need a decent guy with your fourth edge rusher. Your expectations don't need to be too high for this guy. So Takk McKinley's shown he can do that, and his career went down the drain for multiple reasons. He had injuries, his performance fell off, but he looks rejuvenated and explosive. And in this Jets scheme that's all about, pinning your ears back and just going, not thinking about dropping into coverage, not thinking about plugging gaps in the run game. It's just go. Just make something happen. And Takk McKinley has the juice to do that. I can't believe we're still talking about Takk McKinley. This is at least 7 minutes on Takk McKinley now.
MVP, baby. MVP, Takk McKinley. Thank God for Takk McKinley, because if
giving us something,
showed up to this preseason and nobody gave us anything, and these last 7, 8, 10, however many roster spots that are up for debate, I think it's less than 10, but however many roster spots are up for debate are just filled with that one Jason Brownlee catch from Peasley in the back of the end zone against Washington. Dude, what would we even be doing right now?
He's given us life. Takk McKinley is our August savior here. Savior of summer, Takk McKinley.
God, can he just my kingdom for a Takk McKinley sack on Saturday night against Tommy touchdowns. That would be sick. Just put a bow on this whole thing. Go. Just get him. Fantastic. And end the summer on the right note. Will Hassan Reddick show up? Nobody knows. I don't know. Is there anything else even you wanted to recap from today? I feel like the defense, it seems like it was just Daniel Jones was checked down Charlie, and Sauce gave up one completion to Malik Neighbors. Congratulations. DJ Reed, the Jets tweeted earlier a nice pass breakup from DJ. I don't know, man. The Jets defense should kill the Giants offense. That's literally all the takeaway is congrats on doing what we were supposed to do.
Pretty much all you can say. And I mean, from an overall perspective, I think the main takeaway from this joint practice, which as of this recording hasn't been confirmed yet, but it seems all but confirmed, is that I think the Jets are ready to go. I don't think they need to play their starters on Saturday, risk it with Rodgers or any other of their starting players on either side of the football. I mean, you had 3 joint practices here.
Aaron Rodgers going out there on Saturday night, especially after today, would send me into a brain aneurysm.
Oh yeah,
that would be terrible.
At this point, every Jets fan should have that reaction if it happens. And admittedly, I was debating it a little bit, but at this point, and Saleh even said it, that this was supposed to be a 75 play joint practice of team drills, which is basically a game's worth. So he didn't officially say it yet as of the time we're recording this, but he did say that he's made his decision going into that practice. And given that they played as many plays as they did and they performed as well as they did, seems pretty likely we're not seeing them on Saturday, and they don't need it. They're ready to go. So rest up. Mike Williams, get back. Hassan Reddick, please show up. We'd love to have you. If not, we got Takk McKinley.
All right, so let's call it right now. It's 8:53 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, August 21st. Is Hassan Reddick on the plane on September 7th, whenever they go out there?
My brain says yes, because my brain just doesn't see the logic. And Hassan Reddick not doing that.
Well, that's because there is none. You're a smart guy. There is no logic for him not showing up at this point.
But my gut is telling me no. It's just just feels like he's not going to be there. But
I
looking
also
at it logically, I don't get how he doesn't. But
I'm
we're
also
here
leaning
and he's taking it this far.
I'm completely with you. There's no logical reason to push this. I just love how Matthew Judon shows up in Atlanta, and it's like, yeah, I don't need a new contract. They haven't seen me play. They can't pay me for something I haven't done for them. Hilarious, like absolutely hilarious. And of course, this just happens to the Jets, and everybody out there watching, listening, whatever, you know how this goes. That of course it's always us getting the short end of the stick on literally anything, but I do agree. I would be surprised if he's there. I'd love to have him. I think the team would be a lot better with him, but it's going to be interesting on, how that affects roster construction after this week as we get into cut down day next Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever it's going to be. Um, do you carry an extra edge? Do you just carry another body until you know he's showing up or not? You've made the point a couple times. Chris Jones sat out the season opener last year for Kansas City and started playing week 2. So it's not completely unheard of. And Chris Jones had a phenomenal, fantastic season and was the best defensive player on a Super Bowl team. So it's all out there. It's happened before. I'd prefer if it didn't have to happen that way. But really, when you talk about consequential or inconsequential of this offseason to this point, everybody's healthy for the most part. Mike Williams is getting healthy. That's pretty consequential. And Hassan Reddick isn't there. That's the other consequential part. So it's you take the good with the bad. But I think that's pretty much where we're at right now as we sit 3 days away, 72 hours from the final preseason game that hopefully will be played by Taka McKinley and maybe Will McDonald. But outside of that, it's kind of a show me game for these last couple spots.
Yeah, agreed. It feels like they're in a good spot, ready to go. Outside of the one drama that has to be there, which is unfortunate.
It wouldn't be a season opener without it.
It
wouldn't. It doesn't feel right.
There just has to be something. Like, I mean, outside of that, it's even the Tippmann snapping thing that was
that went away in like 6 days. That was great
in a week. So like, there had to be something. It's just guaranteed. It can't be that ho hum going into a season opener. But at the same time, as frustrating as it is, like you said, there's a lot outside of that to feel good about. People are healthy. And I'm not even going to knock on wood because that doesn't work. I did that every time we talked about Rodgers going to last season. Meant nothing. So stop knocking on wood if you
We're
just
an anti-superstition podcast.
I'm anti-superstition right now. I'm usually very superstitious. I used to make sure I was wearing the same color jersey as the Jets every game. Until one time I forgot and they won. And then I think that was the 2022 win streak. Then I started to go anti-color every single week. And they kept winning. So I don't know. I don't think superstition matters. The Jets are healthy right now, and none of these starters are going to play on Saturday. So they're going into week 1 healthy. I'm saying it right now, and I'm not knocking on wood. And everyone should be appreciative of the health of this team right now.
Yeah, things to be thankful for. Dominating the crosstown rivals, winning the Snoopy joint practice. Could you imagine just the absolute shitstorm would be if the Jets offense allegedly was awful earlier this week, like worst practice of the year. Rodgers went up there and owned it and said they were just terrible on Monday. Could you imagine if they were just bad today?
The heat would be there. It would be there. They would take heat for that.
So be thankful that didn't happen.
Yeah,
at the very least, and a lot to be thankful for. So we'll be back Saturday, Sunday, night Snoopy Bowl. So we'll figure out what time. But we'll be back to presumably talk about Takk McKinley's domination again and see if Michael Clemens can literally do anything. But keep it locked. Jets X Factor. Plenty of coverage from today's joint practice. Michael will be there chopping it up. Hope you all enjoy the Snoopy Bowl. We'll be back this weekend and more consequential things to come. That's a promise from us.